Today, we're going to make Flappy Bird from scratch together. This will be a good place to start for a beginner to create an endless 2D game. You will learn how to create endless terrain, score, and save your high score. While Flappy Bird is originally made of sprites, which is 2D images, we will make it in 3D. Start by creating a third-person character project. Download the files from the description. Then, drag the folder into your game. Don't worry about these errors. We have two folders in here, one for sprites or 2D images, and one for sounds. Let's start off by creating our bird. There are multiple colors of birds, but I will choose the red bird. There's also 3 textures per bird, one for each position of the wings. We will simulate the animation by changing materials. Right-click all 3 sprites and create a material. Name them so that you know which material is which texture. Open up the texture. In order to remove the background of the bird textures, we need to change the material's blend mode to masked. On the texture, we have an alpha channel. Connect this to the opacity mask. What this does is make anything black become invisible. Repeat this for the rest of the textures. Open up the third-person character blueprint class. First, let's set up the camera. You can just go ahead and delete the camera boom. Adjust the camera so it's facing our character, looking toward the right. We don't need the mesh, but since we can't delete it because it's a required part of the class, we can just hide it. Add a plane and rotate it by 90 degrees on the X. Set the material to be any of the materials. Oops, I rotated the plane while the game's running. We don't need to be able to move or rotate our camera. You can keep the jump input if you'd like, but I will just use the space key directly. Add a launch character node and check the Z override. Set the value to be around 600. We're not going to need any of the terrain in the map, so let's delete everything except the floor. Find some space and add a begin play node. To simulate the flying animation, we're going to keep changing the material continuously. First, set the material to be the flying up material. Then set it to be the middle or normal bird. Lastly, set it to be wings down. Then set it to be the normal again. Add another delay and connect to the first node. Look at that. Now let's adjust the size of the bird. This part's a bit of trial and error, so take your time. Make sure you adjust the plane and the capsule size, or radius. You want to make sure the capsule is a little bigger than the plane. Next, create a new variable called dead. After each delay in our flap animation, check if dead is true. If it's false, go ahead and change the material. If it's true, do nothing. We don't really need one on the last, since if the bird flaps once after dying, it's no big deal. Let's move on to building the ground. Create a new blueprint class for it. Make a material using your ground texture. You don't need to do the opacity mask thing with this one. Add a plane as the visual base and rotate it the same way we did with the bird. I'm scaling mine to 2 on the x-axis and 1 on the y. Since it's a plane, z doesn't really matter. Move the ground to the edge, or better yet, just delete it. Set your bird's movement mode to flying. Copy and paste the ground plane a few times. You can also duplicate it with Ctrl-D, but this might leave the plane in a different position. Make sure your tiles are placed end to end without overlapping. If they do overlap, it will look something like this. If you're using grid snapping and still getting overlap, it's likely due to scaling. So that's why I always recommend using even sizes when creating seamless spawning terrain. Instead of moving the bird, we'll create the illusion of movement by moving the terrain. You can do it either way, but it's easier in this case. In your ground blueprint, add a projectile movement component and set the desired speed. The important setting to change here is the gravity. Make sure it's 0. It's moving, but in the wrong direction. To reverse pretty much anything, just slap a minus in front of it. We're getting closer. Let's add the ground collision. Cover the entire ground. Also, make sure it's a bit big on the y-axis because we're using planes, and even though it might look like it's colliding, it may not. In the onComponent hit event, cast to your third-person character and add a do once node. Go back to the character class. I'll just add some comments to know what's where. You don't necessarily need to fill the comment, though. Create a new event. This will be called when our bird dies. Do once as always to prevent bugs. Set the dead variable to be true. Call the event in the ground class. Let's also add a print to test. Now we need to make sure that the ground stops moving when we die. Add a for each loop and feed it with a getAllActors of class node. Select the ground class. Then go back to the ground and create a stop custom event. Drag the projectile movement as reference and destroy component. Also check if it's valid, otherwise you may get an error. So technically, we can get the projectile movement from the loop and destroy it, like this. But for some reason, that doesn't work. So you might be wondering, why don't we have to set our movement mode back to falling? That's because when we launch our character, it automatically changes our movement mode to falling. Now, let's seamlessly spawn more terrain. Add another box collision. Make sure to scale it so that you overlap it no matter what. On Begin Overlap, cast again like before, and spawn the ground actor. I'll set the collision box to be visible in-game so that I can demonstrate the spawning, but you don't need to do this. Select the last plane, or create one more. Change the material to recognize it easily. Use getWorldLocation and connect to the location. The spawning works, but it spawns way inside our first ground actor. This is because it spawns relative to 0. So ground 1 is located at location 0. This is what spawns in the location we selected earlier. To fix it, delete all planes before this one. Let's hide the spawn ref. Sometimes you can end up with a result like this. We're just going to have to try moving the spawn ref back and forth to get the perfect result. It's still clipping a tiny bit. If moving it by 1 unit isn't doing the trick, we can use the Details panel and adjust the decimal value. Let's just set it to be hidden in-game instead. There. Now it's perfect. Time for the pipes. Although we could technically create the pipes in the ground class, it's harder to align and make seamless in there. So it's better to make it a separate class. You guessed it, add a plane. Create a material of the pipe texture and do the opacity mask thing again. Scale the pipe so that you have a bit of height. That's a good size. Create another pipe. The distance between the pipes will also take some trial and error. The closer they are, the harder your Flappy Bird game will be. We also have to make the pipe move. Set it to be the same speed as the ground. Oops, I forgot to remove gravity. We also have to stop the pipes when dying. Copy the stop event from the ground and paste into the pipe class. Let's add the background. Add a plane to your world. Since we're not moving, the background doesn't have to either. But if you want the background to move, you can create it the same way we created the ground. Promote the day and night to a material. Set the plane to be the day material. And scale it so that it covers everything height-wise. Then duplicate the plane and cover the rest of the screen. Let's create an event for the game to start so that we can create the Get Ready screen. I'll skip making this screen in this video, simply because there's no point making it. But if you want to make it, I think you'll be able to after watching to the end. We only want pipes to start spawning when the game begins. Split the location vector. Depending on how your world is placed, you will need to try different values to see exactly where to spawn the pipes on each axis. If you're using the exact same setup as me, you can just copy my values. This delay controls the space between each pipe set when they spawn. To only make our character go up and not the camera, we will need to create a separate character actor, just to possess its camera. So duplicate our character and place it in the world. Remove all code. And on Begin Play, set View Target with Blend. Get Player Controller on Target. Leave the View Target empty, or connect it to Self. That's more like it. So now we have the X and Y location of the pipes, but to set the pipe height randomly, we need to find out what the maximum height we can spawn them at is and the lowest point that we can spawn the pipes. Let's just start by typing in a value and see how it goes. I'll start with how low we can go. The ground aligns differently than in the viewport, so keep that in mind. We can go lower. That was too low. That should do. So we can set this to be the minimal value. Just do the same thing for the height. Now the pipes will spawn at random heights. I'm not sure if you can see it clearly on video, but the ground seems to be moving faster than the pipes, even though we set them to be the same speed. To fix this, increase the speed of the pipes by 20. This value will depend on your speed. So if you're using a greater speed, the difference may vary. The pipes are also very close to each other. We can increase or reduce distance between each by changing the spawn delay. Let's add the pipe collision. Again, make sure to scale it greatly. I will not set this collision to block, since on hit can sometimes be inaccurate. Instead, on begin overlap, kill the bird. Okay, that sounded harsh. We can keep jumping after dying, so let's fix that. After adjusting the collision left and right, it seems that the ground collision is a bit too high. This is because the ground is spawning in front of the bird, and due to our perspective, we will need to lower the collision. That's good. The bird is still moving a bit after dying, which could look cool. But since I'm aiming to make it like the actual game, I need to add a stop movement immediately node. Also, turn off the collision on the pipe plane. Let's add the collision for the up pipe as well. Since the project only includes images, it will be difficult to set the score after 9. So instead, download this font. Link is in the description. Drag the font to your desktop. Then drag it into your game. Create a new widget. This will be the Get Ready screen and the HUD. Add a canvas panel. Add a text and set it to be the font we just imported. Scale it and locate it properly. You can also set the alignment on X to be 0.5 and location on X to be 0. This is useful if you want to center things. We can start adding sounds. Add the flying sound when jumping. In order to set the landscape textures to be night randomly, select all the planes and drag them into your level blueprint. Using a switch on int for randomness, the more inputs you add, the less likely it is to occur. Set the plane materials to be the night texture. How likely you want it to be night is totally up to you. Go back to the pipe class and add another collision in between the pipes. This will be used to score points. Cast to the character and check if dead is false. Head back to the character class and create a new event called Add Points. We will call this every time we go between the pipes. Play the score sound. Create an integer variable called points. Increment it. Remove the game start from the begin play. Instead, create the main menu widget. Also, promote it to a variable. This isn't technically required, but will be useful to keep our code cleaner. Add an image in the widget. Set it to be the Get Ready image. It's called Message in here, though. Center it and scale it however you like. It's been pretty dark in this world, and it's kind of annoying. To make your world brighter, select the directional light and increase the intensity. In order to remove the Get Ready screen, we need to use a Do Once gate system. So essentially, the first time we press the jump button, the Get Ready screen will disappear, and that gateway will be closed. To prevent jumping twice, we can use a gate. You could technically drop the gate and set up the code like this instead, but I wanted to show you why gates can be useful. Choice is yours, however. Now let's create the Get Ready Fade animation. Name the image properly. Press on the Animations tab. Press the plus icon. Rename the animation to whatever you'd like. Press the Add button. If you have selected the Get Ready image, it will show up here. Press the Add and select Color and Opacity. In order to create the animation, just move the timeline and set the alpha to 0. Create a game start event in here too, and play the animation when it's called. Also set input mode to game only. If you want to be able to jump with a mouse click, you can connect it like so. Call the event using the main menu widget. I'll also set the mouse cursor to be visible, but it's not required. Call the Add Point event from the pipe class. I'll also move the bird back a little bit so that we can actually see it. The mouse clicking is a bit off, so let's make some tweaks. Add this to prevent too much jumping at once. Too much jumping at once? Do once. You see what I did there? Also, connect the released. You can move the ground spawn collision to be in front so that we don't see the next ground spawning. The ground isn't spawning. That's weird. It's actually because our character spawns inside the collision. So since we removed all planes before 0, and we need to locate the first ground correctly so that we don't see the second ground spawn, and spawning doesn't work when we spawn inside, we can just add another ground actor at the beginning. Now let's add a Game Over screen. Create a new widget called Game Over. To animate the white screen, add a border. Scale it so that it fills the entire screen. Create an animation like we did before. But this time set it to be 0 in the beginning. Just slide the timeline to around 15 and set opacity to 1. Then move it another 15 frames to 30 and set the opacity back to 0. Play the animation on construct. Set the Z order to be less than 0 so that it doesn't cover any buttons later on. Create the Game Over widget on the die event. Play hit sound. Add a small delay and play the next sound. Go to the Add Point event and using the HUD widget reference, change the score text to be the points. Set the bird plane collision to overlap, or no collision for that matter. Now let's create the bird rotation. When jumping, it's facing a little bit up, and when falling, it's facing straight down. Go to the jumping code and add a Move Component To node. Connect the plane to the component. Since this node moves component relatively, it means that 0 doesn't mean no movement, but rather move to position 0. So we must set the default values to be the plane's current values. You can either get relative location or rotation and connect directly, or set the values manually. Over time decides how long it will take for the plane to rotate. I'll set it to 0.1. I'll set the Y rotation to around 25. To make the bird look down after falling for a little bit of time, add a retriggerable delay. Use exact same values, except for the Y rotation, which we can set to -90. You'll notice something weird happening. This is the plane Z rotation changing. I don't know exactly why this happens, but to prevent it from happening, instead of setting the rotation to -90, set it to something like -88. We're almost done now. Let's add the rest of the game over stuff. Add the game over text image. Set it to be hidden, since we need it to show up after a small delay. This time, we're going to animate the position instead. It goes a little up and then down. After the delay in the event graph, set it to be visible and play the animation. It's not perfect, but that'll do. To create the score background, add another border. Something cool about the color picker in Unreal is that it can pick up colors outside the engine as well. Add the rest of the details. Create another animation. Add all of the icons this time, inside this one animation. Then, animate the position of the background. Copy the transform. Paste into all of the other things. Set all of them to be hidden. The pause icon isn't included by default in the Flappy Bird files, but I added it in there to make things easier for you. Add a button and set it to be the pause icon. Design it, scale it, etc. This one's very easy. On pressed, flip-flop. And set game paused and not paused. Add another delay node. Then go ahead and add 2 more buttons to the screen. I will not give the share button any functionality as it is beyond the scope of this video. That happened a bit fast. The last animation happens a bit fast. You can always change the position of the keyframes. I'll make the score texts a bit bigger. The last animation will be the black transition from the Game Over screen to the Get Ready screen. Add another border and set its color to be black. This time, make sure it covers everything, so don't decrease the Z order. When pressing OK, call the animation and set its visibility. After a small delay, use the Open Level node to reopen the level. In order to make the transition smooth, we will need to create the opposite effect in the main menu widget, so that the black fades out. On Construct, play the animation. Pause button also works. Adjust the collision if needed. Now, let's create our Highscore Saving system. Create a new class and search for Save Game. You can name this anything you want. All you really need to do in here is create an integer variable called Highscore. I do have a more in-depth video about saving if you want to check that out. First, we need to create the save. Open up the level blueprint. Add a sequence. First, add a load game from slot node. The slot name can be anything, but this will be used throughout the whole saving, so make sure you call it something simple. Cast to the game save class we made. On cast failed, create save game object and select the class we made. Finally, save game to slot. Remember to use the same name. In your character, make sure to load the save. Load game from slot. Cast and promote it to a variable. Go to your die code. Set the score text in the Game Over widget to display our current score. Here, we want to check if our current score is greater than our saved high score. On false, set the high score text to be our saved high score value. Set text using the Game Over widget reference. If it is, set the high score variable to be our current score. Don't forget to save. So now, what's going to happen is the save doesn't exist and will be created. The high score is currently 0, so it will be set to be our current score value. If we die before beating the score, the high score remains. If we beat it, it becomes the new high score. And this is saved throughout, so if you close the engine, restart your PC, doesn't matter. The mouse input can also be replaced with a widget button instead. This will be more effective, but it will prevent you from selecting things in the viewport in-game. In order to prevent performance issues, in case the player gets a very high score, we need to delete each actor after some time. And we're done. You can change any of the values we've set to get your desired results.